I then also made the offer that when we start, I would publicly, so that where his family is as well, I would, and whoever else heard the comment and interpreted it in the manner in which he did, should know that it was not personal or intended to hurt. And again, Mr. Tabete, my apologies. I hear your sons are here as well. Yes. Apologies, because ubaba wekhaya, he's a umnumzan. And really, I'm not going to be soft, as I indicated to you, but the intention is not to use intemperate language or to affront your dignity in any way. And please, if I do, please object, Mr. Tabete. I can only learn from it when I am corrected. It can only build my character. It can't destroy me. But I do apologize. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Basha. I don't know whether you want to say anything, Mr. Tabete, or not really. I just don't want to cut you off in case you wanted to say something in response.
Chair, I would only say I accept the apology.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tabashe, and thank you to Mr. Tabete and his legal representatives. I'm aware that the whole issue was handled in a very constructive manner from all sides. I just want to acknowledge that there is a lot of cooperation coming from all sides in regard to Mr. Tabete. His lawyers have been very cooperative throughout the proceedings. So Mr. Tabete has been helpful as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We may proceed then.
Back to asking you some robust questions, Mr. Tabete. I know you are ready for them.
He has never been readier.
No, he knows. No, I did say to him, and we agreed.
But
back to business as usual.
Before we continue, he owes me an answer.
Oh, yes, he does, Chairman.
Yes. Mr. Tabete, you have had some time to reflect on the question I put before lunch. Have you got an answer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would agree with you, Chair, that even over and above the requirements, one would additionally do additional search of information. So there's nothing stopping anybody to do so.
Yes, no, thanks. And looking back, you would concede that you should therefore have done much more than just checking whether Estina was tax compliant.
Yes, Chair. Given the current situation, I would concede that we could have done additional check.
Well, could have done is one thing, but should you have done? That's the one I'm more interested in. So in other words, do you concede that you should have done more than just checking whether they were tax compliant?
I agree, Chair.
Yes, and one reason why it would be important to do that, because you referred to litigation, for example, earlier on. You know, if you wanted to recover some money from Estina as a result of being involved with them in the project, and you found that they've got nothing, then the department would suffer a financial loss that may have been recoverable if it was a company that had the right financial base and so on. You appreciate that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tabete, can I just add my views on exactly the same topic? And also it's something for you to reflect on, and I hope give us a response. You see, 4 issues arise for me in relation to the due diligence on Estina. The first issue is interrogating the nature of the business that they conducted. If you want to have reference to the documentation, you find the due reference on page 535 of the court record. I don't think it's necessary. We dealt with it earlier, unless you really want to look at that document. And again at 541. The second issue that arises is the address of the sole director, Mr. Kamal Basram. It's a Sunning Hill address. So when you received the letter confirming they were the partners to Paras, what I would have thought would be you'd find the CIPIC details or the certificate of incorporation and find that, in fact, the address of this director appears to be one that could possibly be one he's running from home. I'm not saying it is, in fact, one where he lives, but the address is not the same as the address that appears on the documents in October 2012. The third issue, Mr. Tabete, is of course, the change in director. Mr. Kamal Basram changed and Su Yong took over as a director. These issues are important because you set up a agri-BEE, or you're intending to set up an agri-BEE entity that would benefit emerging farmers. So if Estina is, as a company, not completely above board, number one, if you are putting something close to 500 million, well, let's call it 300, let me take the Paras bit off, 300 million into a project, you want to be sure about who you're trading with, who you are dealing with. Am I making sense to you? And this is only in terms of why I would have expected you to interrogate the issues. That's the only reason I give you the long history.
Chair, it's a statement. I haven't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was thinking whether to say, Mr. Bashi, maybe you should take those three one by one. Maybe it might be easier to follow. I'd forgotten which was the. I had forgotten that which of the first and the second. So I'm wondering whether that might have also caused Mr. Tabete some uncertainty.
My apologies. It's because I'm now trying to rush. The issues you have identified, Chairman, as you interrogated them with Mr. Tabete.
Yes.
I'm simply confirming that as an evidence leader,
Yes, okay.
I make common cause with you. That's really all.
And you are adding the figure, the amount that the department would put it in. So,
Yeah.
so Mr. Tabete, basically what Mr. Bashi is saying is, when you, as the head of department, were going to take 300 and something million rand of taxpayers' money and put it into a project with this entity, Estina, she would also expect you to really check, do a certain check much more than what you did. And she refers to the address of the director and so on. So, but she is following upon on what you and I discussed earlier. I take it that your answer would be, having reflected, you agree that when you are going to put so much of taxpayers' money into a project, you should do a better check than the one that you did.
Yeah, Chair, I have agreed on that. The only input I would want to make is that it shouldn't sound as if we were going to put this 300 million at a go and it disappears.
No. That's a point that you are entitled to make.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. I would only say, if there were to be anything wrong, it wouldn't be that entire amount, because you would pay money, something done. If you are happy, then you proceed. So it could be a certain amount, but not entirely the full
Yes.
amount.
Yeah, okay.
And I accept that, Mr. Tabete.
Thank you.
But let's go back to page 239 of HH10. That's your statement, or your affidavit. Page 239, your statement or affidavit. It's the 2017 one.
The-
That's the page that follows the one that has paragraph 12, eh? Yeah.
Correct, Chairman. In fact, it's, most of paragraph 12 is on this
It
page.
is on that page, yeah. It's the page that has got most of paragraph 12 that we have been dealing with. Page 239, the red 239.
Okay. I've got it, Chair.
We've dealt with 12, we've dealt with paragraph 13.
Okay.
We are now dealing with the agreement that Estina brought to you.
That's correct, Chair.
And that's the agreement of the 5th of June, 2012.
Okay.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the agreement as drafted was then taken to the state law advisors. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, you're not referring to the contents of the agreement. You're just, you are on page 239, but you're making a reference to the agreement.
Yes, and I'm at paragraph 14, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I'll point Mr. Tabete to the actual agreement in a few minutes. It's
Yes.
just understanding who drafted it.
Yeah, Chair, the paragraph 14 she's referring to
Yes,
is not taking all the steps that, I think it's at the end of what has happened.
yes, yes.
It's at the end of what has happened.
But her
Please-
question is, who drafted the agreement that paragraph 14 refers to?
Chair, the original agreement was drafted by Estina.
Okay,
Now, Mr. Tabete, help me with this one. I have always understood that where government enters into contracts, into agreements, government will draft it in a way, that agreement, in a way that will protect government. The other party will not draft it. Am I wrong about that?
Not all the time, Chair. Where you have capacity, you do draft. And where you do not have the capacity, the other party can also draft.
Was there an agreement between yourselves and either Paras or Estina as to who would draft the original affidavit?
They had indicated, Chair, that they would assist in drafting the agreement and then present it to us.
Where,
well, I guess that must mean not that they would assist. If they were going to present it to you, they would draft it
They would draft
and
it.
then present it to you.
That's correct, Chair.
Yeah.
now, I'm interested in your comment that this was really at the end of a process. I take it that you are indicating that you would have had discussions with them about what should go into the agreement, Mr. Tabete.
That's correct, Chair, because we already, both of us had documents at hand. That document would have been then in line with whatever documents that we were having.
When you speak of having documents in hand, you would have had your own draft agreement and they would have had their own before the final agreement was generated by Estina.
No, Chair.
Please explain, Mr. Tabete.
Documents means you all have a
Notes.
similar.
Notes, you mean? Like your own notes of what
Yes.
should go into the agreement?
Yeah,
right? Yes.
we all know what is the intention and is the same. Then the agreement can be drafted.
Did Do you know whether Paras had anything at all to do with the drafting of this original agreement of the 5th of June?
Chair, in all our documents, my understanding of interacting with Estina wasn't interacting with Paras, because it was their company identified, presented to us.
But the question is whether you knew whether this agreement was drafted by Paras without anybody from, no, by Estina, without anybody from Paras being involved in that drafting or in the preparation of that document, or is the position that you don't know, but for your purposes, as long as it came from Estina, you took it as coming from Paras?
Yes, Chair, your last explanation.
Yes, that's the correct one.
That's the correct one, yes.
So you didn't know whether anybody from Paras had been involved in the drafting of the agreement, but as long as it came from Estina, you took it that for all intents and purposes, it was coming from Paras.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
The reason that becomes an important consideration, Mr. Tabete, is because my reading of the Memorandum of Understanding between Paras and Estina is that it's a one-year Memorandum of Understanding. Was that your understanding as well?
That's correct, Chair.
The second issue arising from the Memorandum of Understanding was that Estina would be the agent of Paras. Was that your understanding?
That's correct, Chair.
The third issue that arises from the agreement is that Estina would look for business opportunities, including in the agricultural sector, for Paras. Was that your understanding?
I'm trying to think, Chair, not outside this agreement. I wouldn't be interested in other businesses that they would have looked for Paras outside what we were doing.
Just for the sake of convenience, excuse me, the Memorandum of Agreement is in reference bundle A, so it's reference bundle A at page 284. Your mic, Mr. Tabete. Thank you. I'm looking at page 289 of that document. Where clause 4 deals with the duties and responsibilities of Estina. I will not go through all of them, but simply highlight that the first one says, Estina shall identify and secure opportunities whereby the company can participate for the project implementation in both government and private sector. You agree that's what's recorded here?
That's correct.
I really don't want to go into all of them because I don't believe it's necessary. I'm just illustrating the point I make about Estina being an agent looking for business opportunities for Paras, the company being Paras.
That's correct, Chair.
But let's move beyond this document. And of course, this particular document, I beg your pardon, Mr. Tabete, I'm looking at page 295 right now. And you have Mr. Sanjeev Gautam, who signed on behalf of Estina. And you have Mr. Gajender Kumar, who signed on behalf of Paras. And though my copy is a poor copy, I believe this document was signed in May of 2012. But I will correct that if I'm wrong, if we find a better copy. The copy I have is rather poor.
Mr. Tabete might be able to say whether that was the correct month. Do you have any recollection whether it was signed in May?
I think it's correct, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, the copy is very poor, but I think it's correct.
Okay. All right.
In fact, if I might correct myself, my colleague has just pointed out that if we look at page 285, Chairman, it says that the memorandum of understanding is dated 11th April 2012.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
at least it's in the same, more or less, same ballpark period.
Yes, yes, well, would that necessarily have been the date of signature, or it could be a date of the preparation of the document? In the end, it doesn't matter probably for our purposes, but I'm just saying the may well be correct if maybe there are different dates for preparation and signature.
Yes, Chair.
But
We'll
really
bring it to your
doesn't matter.
attention
Yeah.
if we do find a
Yeah,
better copy.
okay.
Thank you. So, again, my colleague is making the point that at page 286, just to deal with the date,
Okay.
at page 286, you have under definitions, MOU date as meaning and referring to the 11th of April 2012, being the date of execution of this MOU.
Okay, okay.
So at least we don't need to debate the date. The agreement, the very first agreement, I'm just looking at the cover page, which is page 619, Mr. Tabete. It's called a partnership agreement between the Department of Agriculture, Free State Province, South Africa, and Estina Pty Limited. Are you there?
I'm sorry, I also want to get a 619A,
Of reference
reference bundle A.
B, Chairman,
Okay,
619 of reference B.
okay. Do you know whether we still need the court record bundles
It
this
actually-
afternoon?
Yes, please, Chairman,
Oh.
don't put them too far away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, bring it to me, I will, I'll find the page.
If you can repeat the page, sir.
The page number is 619.
Yeah, 619 on reference bundle B.
Correct, Chairman. .619 is written on the top right-hand corner. Can I ask my colleague?
I've
Are you
got it,
good?
Chair.
Are you good? Thank you. So I was just reading the first two entries there. So it's a confidential document. It's a partnership agreement between the Department of Agriculture, Free State Province, South Africa, and Estina Pty Limited. I would like to pause there and ask, was this by agreement that you would have Estina Pty Limited written here rather than Paras?
Yes, Chair. Remember my original explanation that if you go to this kind of agreement, you would not then include the international company. You will only then put it with the local company.
And you explained then that because of jurisdictional issues, you want to be able to sue the local partner.
That's correct.
And that's why by agreement you then had
With S.
formulated it this way.
Yes, sir.
I'm going further down, and you say here, in relation to the implementation of a dairy project at Vrede. Can I pause again at Vrede? Now, I know that the broad discussions you had identified Vrede.
That's correct.
That's correct. But you had not identified the land that you wanted to allocate to this farm, or had you?
We had already done so, Chair.
You had not gone through the formalities of acquiring that land as at June 2012.
Not yet, Chair. It has not yet been formally made available to us. But I want to use the correct word. In discussion, there were no objection to us having the land.
Who would you have had these discussions with, Mr. Tabete? And please, I ask you this because on my record, your visit to the Phumelele local municipality was on the 12th of June, 2012. I don't want to confuse you. So who did you have these discussions with prior to signing this 5th of June agreement?
Chair, we had already been having interaction with the municipality and the intended beneficiaries prior to this, because by the time we were formalizing, we had already done a lot of meetings, going into Vrede, the municipality organizing meetings for us, talking also to the beneficiaries. So already the land in question was already available, but the formalization of the release of the land had not been done, which we then later requested that it be formalized.
Two things arise, Mr. Tabete, and I'm going to chop them up.
Okay.
I'll start with the beneficiary issue. My understanding is that as at the 5th of June, there was no formality with regard to who the list of beneficiaries might be. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Chair, we had the list of who will be the beneficiaries of the project, because we had interacted with them. We had categorized them into groups. There were those that were interested in pigs, there were those that were interested in vegetables, and so on. So we had meetings before, so we had already known which of those that would have interest, and we had list of all of them. Even before, we had formally went back to them to say, now give us your names and ID numbers for the purpose of financing.
Mr. Tabete, I want to interrogate the informality of that. I agree with you. You had been to Tembalihle Township
Yes.
with MEC Zwane at the time and other officials
Yes,
to speak with beneficiaries. I agree.
that's correct.
You had asked them to indicate their areas of interest, as you've just said.
That's
Who wanted cattle farming, who was interested in poultry, et cetera, et cetera.
That's correct.
So this is why I say I'm taking issue with the informality of the approach and the status of those people as beneficiaries of a rather important agreement where the formality of registering them as beneficiaries had not been completed. Are you with me?
Yeah, Chair, we had the list of the beneficiaries. My understanding of formally registering them should only come when the national department says to us, we agree in financing this endeavor with you, provide us then with your list of beneficiaries with the following details. It's only then that you go and collect. It doesn't mean that we did not know them. We knew them, but in the form required, we had then to go back and collect that additional information. They knew themselves also So it was easy for us to call them and collect the required information.
You see, Mr. Tabete, my difficulty with that proposition is that fortunately one can look at the history now and find that to date, in law, they have never been beneficiaries. Yet your intention, when you went to see them, was to make them beneficiaries of this program.
Well, maybe before he responds, maybe the in-law part might confuse because he is not a lawyer. I'm saying you are not a lawyer, Mr. Tabete, even though you didn't tell me you are not one. Maybe you are, but can I take it that you are not?
No, I'm not.
Yes. So he might not be able to say whether you are correct or not correct when you say in law they have never been beneficiaries. So you might wish to put it differently.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do that. All I'm communicating, Mr. Tabete, is they have no legal recourse as beneficiaries. They did not when you were there in June of 2012, and earlier actually. Today, they do not have a legal document that makes them beneficiaries. But I know your intention, from what I have read, was that you wanted emerging farmers to be beneficiaries.
Yeah, Chair. The processes that should have unfolded maybe to achieve what is called in-law.
The in-law part.
The in-law part
Yeah.
did not happen because we were in the beginning of the project. And one of the responsibilities that we had requested Estina to do was to register a company on their behalf where you will then put them in and officially then make them beneficiaries. But we did not get to that stage. The intention was correct, but we did not get there.
You see, Mr. Tabete, when I look at the face of this document, the only beneficiary here is Estina because it is the registered company that is in business with the Department of Agriculture. You would agree with that?
Chair, I would not agree because we have just agreed now that the relationship was to stand for a year. After that, the company of the beneficiaries will take over. But what I'm explaining is that we did not get to the interventions were before we could get there. Then the projects came to a stall.
Yes, but what council is saying is, as at the 5th of June 2012, when you, on behalf of the Department of Agriculture, signed, well, one of you, I think, may have signed later, but at any rate, as at the time of the signing of this agreement
Yes.
between the Department of Agriculture and Estina, the only beneficiary in terms of this agreement, maybe I shouldn't say beneficiary, the only entity or person that really stood to benefit in terms of this agreement was Estina, and not anybody that you may have contemplated would ultimately benefit, simply on the face of the agreement. That I think that, I hope I've put it accurately, that that's the gist of the proposition.
I would agree, Chair, with your statement if
Yes.
it was not covered in the agreement signed
Yes.
with Estin.
Yes.
But that was covered in the agreement, that they would not be the only beneficiaries, but
Yes.
they would be
Yes, in the
Yes.
future.
in future, yes. So it has been covered in the agreement signed
Yeah.
by that time.
For the future.
For the future, yes.
Okay.
You see, Mr. Tabete, I'm again still looking at the front cover page of the agreement. You have a company called Zaina Investments, Pty Limited, trading as Mohuma Mobung Dairy Project. I don't know if you're able to explain who Zaina would have been and what the intention was in setting out the last bit, trading as Mohuma Mobung Dairy Project. I fail to understand exactly what this is about.
Chair, this is exactly what I've been explaining, because we wanted to make sure that this company becomes the beneficiary's company. So hence I was saying we registered this company so that we include it, so that Estina do not become the sole shareholder. But we're saying in this agreement, Zina Investment become the stipulated aggregate BEE, where we're gonna put the beneficiaries.
Is that Zaina Investment Pty Limited that
Yes.
you say would be the vehicle to benefit the beneficiaries?
That's correct, Chair.
Can you recall, Mr. Tabete, who the director or directors in the plural of Zaina Investments might have been?
Chair, it was a shell company. We wanted it registered so that once we have completed all the processes, then we'll take all the beneficiaries and register them into the company. So like we have indicated, it's a shell company. It is not yet completed.
Mr. Tabete, the interest I have in this shareholding structure really is quite important. And it's important because fortunately we have the benefit of the history, what happened over the years. As you correctly pointed out earlier, government put in money in phases into this project. That's correct.
That's correct.
And the idea was to put 114 million into this particular project over a 3-year period.
That's correct, Chair.
The beneficiaries, the 100 beneficiaries of Vrede, Memel, and Warden, who have no legal standing at all, have not seen any benefit from the 114 million that you put in the first year or the second. You would agree with that?
Chair, let me go back again.
Yes.
This agreement in front of us was the original proposed agreement that I had agreed on. We had already interacted with the farmers so that they have an understanding that they're going to become beneficiaries. And we had registered the company and we had incorporated the company into the agreement.
That is Zaina.
That is Zaina. The second agreement, Chair, I want to get to that.
I'm happy with that.
I want to get to that. When we were activating the process, this agreement was then given to the state law advisors, which were not comfortable with this agreement. a new agreement was drafted that I then signed from the state law advisors. That agreement doesn't look like, I was very comfortable with this first agreement because it covered all the elements that I was looking at. But if the legal people advise you this is the correct one to sign, then I signed that one. But still with the intent, purpose of achieving this. Because I've been advised legally that this agreement did not protect the state. Hence the second agreement.
Well, Ms. Kabasha said she was happy that you were going to the second agreement, and that might be because she plans to go there.
It is because the issue I want to raise,
Goes with that.
DCJ, it's really relates to
Yes.
both
Yes.
agreements.
Or
And that
maybe
is-
let me allow you to ask, and then we'll, yeah.
Thank you, DCJ. And that is really the issue around the deviation. Because this arrangement, I'm still on my page 619, the cover page, which sets out the parties. This arrangement was not done in terms of the SCM policy document that we discussed yesterday. Your view, please.
Hence, Chair, I wanted to object yesterday. Because
No,
I
you didn't
saw
want
it
to
was
object. You wanted to put your views, and we said you'd get a chance.
Yes,
Yes.
yesterday I was told I shouldn't go there yet.
Yes, so
Now-
you
now
have
I
been
see it's
waiting
going
for
there.
the opportunity.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, it's your opportunity, use it.
Please.
Yes, Chair, because I wanted to take you through this. We have gone through a number of processes in the supply chain processes of providing support to farmers. I will be very short in this.
Just 1 second. I'm debating in my own mind with myself, Ms. Kabasha, whether what I wanted to deal with, I should deal with now, because once you go to the issue of deviation, that's quite a very important part, and it might take us some time. Or what's your feeling?
I please ask your question, Chairman, because I know that
Yeah,
Mr. Tabete has been waiting for mine since yesterday.
So I will give you the chance to deal with it, but let me ask a few questions on the first agreement first.
Correct.
Am I right to think that this agreement of the 5th of July, I think one of you signed it on the 7th?
Yes.
Yeah, one of you signed on the 5th, the other one on the 7th. But I'll refer to it as
That is correct, Chairman.
yes, the agreement of the 5th. Is the position that you signed it without getting a lawyer to look at it and see whether it's in order if you sign it for the purpose for which you were seeking to sign it, that would be okay?
Chair, in departments, you have legal people, but not at the level that you may require. But when I went through it, it covered the intent of what we've been looking for. We could not see any major issue. I also asked this to the state law advisors, if there was anything in particular that they would have raised, which was a challenge. The only issue that they raised to us was that it did not protect the state. That was the issue that they had raised to me.
But
The mic, Chairman.
Of course, that's a major issue, isn't it?
It is, Chair, but given the position that we did not want this to run very long because we wanted the special purpose vehicle, which is Zina, to eventually take over. Because that will be the company where the money would go. So this was about initiating the process, get it going, getting the company registered so that when we do finances of the farmers, it goes to the correct place.
But was there no money that the department was going to put into this before that vehicle was put in place?
There was, Chair.
A lot of money, isn't it?
It was money, but not a substantial part of the money.
How much was it?
There was 30 million that we wanted to put in so that it sets up the process going.
You say that's not a lot of money.
In comparison with the total cost of the project.
Oh,
Chair.
okay, all right. But the issue of the interest of the government in the agreement would be a major issue because what it could mean is that government, if the agreement were to continue as is, it could mean that government could lose millions of money because the agreement doesn't protect government's interests, isn't it? Is that proposition correct?
Chair, that was the advice that I was given.
Yes, and you accepted the advice.
I accepted the advice.
Yes, but you see now you are at the point where you are interacting with the state law advisors after you have signed the agreement. I am at the time when, before you signed the agreement.
That's
So
correct.
my question is, did it not occur to you that before I sign such an agreement that could see government putting in millions of money, I should get advice from maybe much more senior lawyers than the ones you had? Maybe let me ask, the internal lawyer or legal person that dealt with the matter in your department, are you able to indicate what kind of seniority he had or she had at the time?
The lawyer was at a deputy director level, Chair.
At deputy director level?
Yes, and the lawyer, the state law advisors in the office of the premier was at the
Deputy
DDG
DG,
level.
Deputy Director General level?
Deputy director general.
So the difference was quite huge.
It was quite big, Chair.
And the lawyer that you had internally, was it somebody who was an admitted attorney, an admitted advocate? Was it somebody who had practiced, who had not practiced, or do you know?
No, I don't know, Chair.
You don't know. Do you know how long he had been or she had been a lawyer?
No, normally, Chair, although I will not be precise, the people that will be serving in government would be those that are fresh from school.
Yes.
So I will not be familiar with their
With the
process.
particular one, but
Yes.
but it's fair to say that person would have been quite junior.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. My concern, therefore, is why, as head of department, you would have seen it as fine to rely on the advice of such a junior person for such an important project involving millions of rands and not go to an experienced lawyer, maybe the state law advisors who were quite senior.
Chair, even though I would not have followed the process, at some stages, you have an understanding that if a lawyer doesn't feel comfortable, they consult. That's what I know. A number of times they will tell me that we are busy consulting. Sometimes they will consult senior advocates and so on and so on. I wasn't sure in this case if they would have done the consultation or not. But my belief is that if they feel uncomfortable with any activity, they do consultation.
See, that presents me with a difficulty, Mr. Tabete, because it says to me, you may have consulted somebody who may have left varsity just a few years before, had not practiced law, and that person may not even have consulted any more experienced lawyer, and you gave this person this very important agreement. They looked at it. Just because they didn't convey to you that they were uncomfortable, you were comfortable. I would have thought that the important thing would not be whether the lawyer is comfortable. It's whether you, the client, are comfortable that this person is the type of person who has got the knowledge, experience, and expertise that would make you comfortable to base your decisions on his or her advice. You understand where I'm coming from?
I understand, Chair.
Yeah, so in other words, I shouldn't say, look at this agreement, tell me if it's fine, and if the person says, I think it's fine, and doesn't indicate any discomfort, then I'm comfortable. No. I want to know about how much does that person know in this field for me to be able to be comfortable. If I don't know how much the person knows, I have no grounds to be comfortable. But if I speak to other people whose opinion I trust in the area, and they say, no, so-and-so is a very good lawyer, he's experienced in these matters, he has been around for a long time, then you might have comfort. Or if you know more about that person. But where it's somebody you don't know, you just know they are in the department, you know they are very junior, that you know, and this agreement relates to a very important project in the department and in the province. But you are happy to rely on that on the advice. That's my difficulty. I would have thought that your judgment would have said, this is a very important project. If I'm going to sign any agreement, I must have advice from senior and experienced lawyers. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with you, Chair. That would have been a good thing to do. In a number of instances, we had referred some work. The lawyers have indicated that they would need an external lawyer to assist them. Then I developed this understanding that the lawyer would indicate to you, if I'm not comfortable with this, I need additional help. A number of them, where they've been comfortable, we proceeded with them. So I trusted the judgment that they would then provide to me. But I agree with you, I could have also used my own judgment.
And you accept, don't you, that looking back, it was wrong to entrust something so important or to base your decisions to sign or not to sign this agreement on the basis of the advice or somebody so junior and somebody whose experience and expertise really in the legal field you didn't know.
I agree, Chair. I already accepted it when the state law advisors advised
Yes.
me in this regard.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tabete, you were in the process of giving an explanation on the deviation, just as an opening gambit. There are a number of issues that arise,
That's correct.
but you were about to start explaining the deviation.
That's correct, Chair.
Please, go ahead, sir.
Because this practice, Chair, was not only the practice in the Free Dairy project. This was the general practice.
Okay, please remind me what practice you are referring to. I may have missed something.
The one that I want to explain, Chair.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Money gets allocated to the department to provide support to farmers.
I'm sorry, Mr. Tabete. If you could just, we know that there are different sources. It will help us if you're specific about which monies would come for farmers. Just with each allocation, just explain where it comes from. Sorry to interrupt.
There were three kinds of allocations, Chair. The provincial equitable share, which was termed Muhuma Mubum, would be allocated to the department for farmer support. From the National Department of Agriculture, we were receiving two conditional grants. The one called CASP, which was the Conditional Agricultural Support Program, Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program. And there was another conditional grant which was called Ilima Litsima. These two were part of the DORA allocations that will then come with conditions to us. A very strict condition that will be earmarked only for the benefit of the farmer. We would then, in the department, allocate this money under transfers.
Why would you allocate it under transfers? I don't want you to lose your train of thought, sorry, but it's important for us to understand that.
Thank you, Chair. We had allocated the money before in the department under transfers. And we will then receive the money as approved by national and the province. Then we transfer the money directly to the beneficiary to implement the project. I don't want to go into details, but we struggled. We moved to the next as advised. We allocated the money.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Tabete. I don't want you to go too far without me understanding this part. There were funds that you would receive from different sources, or maybe from one source. There were funds that you received from Treasury. And were there funds that you received also from the National Department of Agriculture? Generally speaking.
Yeah, there were three
sources
of the funds of support of farmers.
In particular, funds provided to give support to farmers.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, three sources.
Three sources, yes.
Yeah, is it the ones I've mentioned? Treasury, National Treasury, Provincial Treasury, and National Department of Agriculture?
No, only two, Chair.
Only two?
The two will come from the National Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
The two conditional grant.
Yes.
And the one that comes from the Provincial Treasury comes from the equitable share.
Okay, so, but those are the three sources you talk about?
Those are the three sources, Chair.
Okay, all right. And you were saying that you would receive those funds and put them under transfer. Is that correct?
Yes, as we receive them, they already get allocated to specific projects.
Yes.
So you know, when you receive the lump sum, you know where it should go.
Yeah, okay.
So originally then, as we receive the money, we'll then disperse it
Yes.
and send it to the project for implementation. It means from transferred, we send the money to the account of the beneficiary.
Okay.
And our responsibility will be then to assist the beneficiary.
And in this instance, when you say beneficiary, you're not talking about a person or a farmer, you're talking about the project for which it is intended, or not really?
It's both, Chair. In some instances, the project will be registered in the name of a company or a CC or whatever form, a trust and so on.
Entity, yeah.
Yes. In some instances, the project will be registered in the name of an individual farmer.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
I just
but-
wanted clarification. I interrupted you. You may proceed unless Ms. Tabashe wants to ask something before. But I know I interrupted you while you were continuing.
No, please continue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We had problems with that because the beneficiaries were not sticking to the business plan. Then we had discussions with Provincial Treasury. We changed the gazetting from transfers to goods and services. Now, hence yesterday I was saying there's a difference between transfers and we allocated the money to goods and services. Goods and
But
services.
yes, you're about to explain what those are.
Yes, goods and services then meant to us to say the department is responsible for the procurement process. You cannot transfer the money.
Okay.
If you want to spend the money, you have to spend the money through the department. It means you must do the project on behalf of the farmer and hand it over to the farmer. It means you must advertise a tender. If, say for an example, you are to build a dairy for this farmer, then you must go and advertise a tender, you must get bidders, and then they must go and erect on the farmer's land. Now, once you have completed, you must enter that into the asset register. It's a requirement. Any money you have spent in government under goods and services, it must go into your asset register. Now, you have a problem of having an asset in a land that does not belong to government. You have that problem, number one. And after you have done so, you have to dispose that asset to the farmer. And you cannot dispose it as a government because you have gazetted this money under goods and services. It means you have to dispose these assets. Any asset that has a certain amount of value, you have to dispose it through the legislature. You go through Treasury and it goes to the legislature. Looking at the number of projects that we were giving support to the farmers, we felt that it gave us a problem because we had a very huge asset register of assets that did not belong to government. Secondly, we had a problem on the grant itself because the grant was saying this is not meant for the benefit of government. So you cannot take money that has been given to a farmer and you put it in the asset register of government. You can't do that. Then we moved back to transfer. Given those challenges that we had, you cannot register those. It was a condition of the grant. You cannot register that asset in government. But if you have registered that money under goods and services, you can't escape from not registering that asset under government and then dispose it to the beneficiary. We had a huge problem with the audit after we've done, because the reconciliation became a problem. You go to a private farmer, you've bought a tractor for this farmer, and this thing is in your asset. You go there, you arrive, the farmer has sold the tractor. Now that is in your asset. but you have told the farmer this is your tractor. He has sold the tractor and you cannot account on the tractor because you were not in control of the tractor. So we decided we have a problem again. We have to go back to transfers because transfers actually says this money is not yours. We are giving it to you to pass it on to the farm. But this time, we're not going to transfer the money to the farm. We will develop an agreement as a department and find service providers who will assist the farmer, because if you give the money to the farmer, the money does not get spent to what we want to do. We'll get a service provider that we will then will implement the project on behalf of the farmer. But we protect the farmer by us as government signing an agreement with the service provider.
So you say to the service provider, we are appointing you, but actually you are acting on behalf of the farmer.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes.
Now we sign.
Of course, you appreciate what I'm finding tricky.
I hear you, Chair. I hear you.
You appoint representatives of the farmers on their behalf.
Yes, Chair, but
Yes.
they sign an agreement with us that they agree.
Okay,
So-
you make sure they give you the mandate.
The mandate, yes.
Yeah, okay.
We sign the agreement with the service provider, but they sign an agreement with us to say we agree that you appoint somebody to implement the project on our
Okay,
behalf. Then we
okay.
had the control.
Yes.
Now, that is what we did. Now, coming now to this process. Now, all the other projects that we had done, we as government, we had been advertising and saying we need implementing agents to assist our farmers. Then they would tender, and then we will then go back to the farmers and say, we have the following implementing agent. Implementing agent A, we believe we can put in this district to assist the farmers of this district, and so on and so on. We will then transfer the money to the implementing agent. Then they do the work and they report. We will not transfer all of it. We'll transfer it so that we also safeguard ourselves that if anything happens to this implementing agent, we have not lost all the money. So they will go and do the implementation.
But can you pause just there, please, Mr. Tabete? The process you're describing would have followed on in terms of the SCM policy, in that there would be a bid process, a competitive process, et cetera, et cetera.
Chair, the money that is allocated under transferred does not require that process. Once the money is under transfers, you pass it on. You do not go through a bidding process. That's the allocation. It's a transfer. It's not, you are not supposed to go through the bidding process. So you receive a transfer. It comes with the condition that it's for this particular project. You transfer the money to that particular project. We had, why we did that, it was because of the previous experience. Then we came up with a system that will help us to make sure that this money goes to the intended purpose.
Again, I'm going to ask you to pause. So you are here referring strictly to CASP grants and to ILIMA grants. Are those the ones you are illustrating now, where it would come in with certain conditions and you simply pass it on?
Yes. Also, the money that we had received from the provincial equitable share, we gazetted it under transfers, because our understanding is that it will serve exactly the same purpose.
Which part of the PFMA stroke treasury regulations permitted you to gazette it? I understand the first two, the CASP and the ILIMA.
Sure.
The third one, I don't quite understand. It's in terms of which particular regulation that you could do that, or provision in the PFMA?
No, Chair, the allocation of the budget
Oh, I see.
is done by the department. You decide how much you want to put where as you present your budget to Treasury.
So it's the broader exercise of how you are allocating your budget as a
As a
department?
department, that's correct, Chair.
Okay.
So, excuse me, let me go back to the two, I think they are grants, ILIMA and CASP.
Yes, Chair.
Were you saying that supply chain management prescripts don't apply to those ones because you are not procuring services or goods? Is that what you were saying?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, okay, so for those ones, those two types, those go to a transfer, I guess when you say transfer, it means transfer account.
It's an item,
It's an item.
yes,
it's a
Chair,
bud-
where you then gazette the money
Oh,
under.
okay. So, so it's not your money.
That's
You are
correct.
supposed to transfer it to somebody.
To somebody, that's correct. Chair.
Yes, okay, and you say, in regard to that, supply chain management doesn't apply.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay,
But the checks and balances that relate to that type of transfer, the CASP and the ILIMA transfer, is that the national department monitors and can withdraw.
That's
Those
correct.
grants.
That's correct, Chair. Hence in the past, we had problems. When the national department comes and say, we've allocated to the province the approval of these projects, we want to go and see them. You said to us, you were supposed to buy a tractor, you were supposed to put a windmill or fences, whatever that was approved. Can we go and see? Then when you had done a transfer, you go there and you don't find those things, you cannot explain. Then we said, but the problem is that we should have put controls in place. And those are the controls that we had put in place to make sure that the money that has been invested, we are under control. We will be able to get those assets. And I can confirm, Chair, it improved. We were able, even when the portfolio committee comes and say, how far have you gone with your CAPs? Can you show us those projects? We were able to show.
But let's then talk about the DORA allocation that would come into province, the vote of the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development would be vote 11, am I right?
That's correct, Chair.
Now, from vote 11, you would then have to budget and decide on where you are allocating what you have.
No, Chair, but by the time that the DORA allocation from national department comes, we as a department in the province, we had already gone there and presented the projects and the names and the amounts. If then there was what we called the National Assessment Panel at national. Now the National Assessment Panel will then approve those projects. Then money will be allocated to the province as per those approved projects. If the value of the projects that we had submitted and got approved was equivalent to 100 million, we will then receive the 100 million. We would then have gazetted that money under transfers in the province. So when the MEC goes and reads his budget speech, he will then be able to say, under farmer support, we have this amount of money, and this is the list of the projects that we are going to support.
Now, the intention of Section 217 of the Constitution coming down to PFMA Treasury regulations, as we discussed yesterday, is to introduce equity into the system, transparency into the system, competitiveness in terms of just making sure there's value for money.
That's correct, Chair.
With the DORA grant, help me with that one, because I think I more or less grasp the conditional grants. With the DORA equitable portion grant, how do you monitor the manner in which that money is spent?
Chair, when that budget gets released, you already know to whom is it going. So there is no competition, because if the money gets allocated to us, and we know from this total amount of this budget, so much is for that project for so and so, this one is for so and so. We received it and under strict conditions from national that you can only use it for the intended purpose. Now that's what we have. Now, the correct thing to do is just to pass it on to the project and to the owner. But we wanted to make sure that it is used for the purpose intended. So we were putting systems in place to make sure that this money gets used for the intended purpose.
Describe any one of those systems that you're referring to help, just to illustrate the point.
The one that I've explained, Chair, was that we will then identify an implementing agent. We'll appoint an implementing agent, then make the implementing agent implement the project on behalf of the farmer, and the department will then be satisfied to be able to report to say, yes, indeed, this money was allocated to this particular farmer, and this is what has been achieved.
I'm back at my issue that I raised with you yesterday in a different context about form over substance. The form being, you've done your part, you've appointed an implementing agent, you've transferred the money to the implementing agent. And this is a very good example, the agreement with Estina.
That's correct.
They were an implementing agent. We can deal with the other issues later.
Okay, Chair.
But in this agreement, by way of example, you then have subcontractors who can be employed.
That's correct, Chair.
What control would the department have over not only the appointment of subcontractors, but the payment of those subcontractors, the verification of their invoices, et cetera, et cetera? You see, Dr. Masiteng described this as something similar to a turnkey project.
That's correct, Chair.
Please explain, I just want to understand the monitoring. How you know you got value for money from that implementing agent you appointed, and that your beneficiaries are satisfied customers of the department.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have to receive monthly reports from the implementing agent in terms of the progress. We normally say to them, you must use our systems, but we cannot take those systems into government. We say, before you buy, do 3 quotations, do compares, don't just go to a shop and say, because they want a tractor, I'm therefore buying this tractor, and I'm delivering to the farm. We say to them, do your due diligence. When we do our monitoring, we come in and we say, you have bought this tractor for the farmer, where are the quotes that you have got? Then they will be able then to provide it to us and say, we have done a quotation here and here, hence we have bought this tractor.
In the department, whose job was it to monitor that expenditure? I know it couldn't be the HOD, because he sits right at the top.
That's correct.
On the ground, whose function was it to monitor that expenditure?
That becomes the responsibility of the chief director, but he has got extension officers on the ground that works directly with the project, that interact on a daily basis with the implementing agent to assist the implementing agents to make sure that projects gets delivered. So on a daily basis, when they go and do quotations, the extension officer is there, is able to advise both the farmer and the implementing agent. At certain instances, for example, if you are to acquire cattle for the farmer, they also bring the farmer along to look at the cattle that they are buying for him. If he agrees, he says, yes, these are the cattle I want. Then the procurement process goes on. So there has been checks and balances on the ground done by the extension officer, and also the chief director has that responsibility. Because he's responsible, there are directors in the district, extension officers, and then the chief director oversees the whole process. I
know I'm moving forward rather rapidly. I'm still going to come back to the technicality around the deviation. But can I debate this checks and balances issue?
Well, hang on, Mr. Bashe. I also still want to stay on this,
Yeah.
maybe we call it deviation, maybe don't call it deviation, that he was talking about. Let me ask some questions before you move on. When you said in respect of the two, I think, grants, CASP grants, and the other one,
Ilima Litsima, Chair.
Ilima here. When you said you would get a service provider who would then effectively assist the farmer. But you'd get an agreement from the farmer that a mandate that you can appoint the service provider. That was in regard to Ilima and CASP, or did I misunderstand?
It was with regard
That
to...
example, did it apply to that, or did it apply to more than those two?
It applied to all the three.
All the three?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. Now, the third one being the one you get from Treasury.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. Is that the one you said is from Dora?
Correct,
Dora.
Chairman.
Just remind me, the Dora.
It's not the DORA one, Chair. The DORA is the two that comes from national.
Oh,
It's
okay.
from the division.
So the Dora one, this doesn't apply to the Dora, this example doesn't apply to DORA.
It applies to all of them.
To all of them.
To all of them. But the one that comes from the province is the provincial equitable share.
Equitable share.
Yeah, it's not the one that comes from national.
Yes. Now, were you saying that the supply chain management prescripts and policies and procurement policies apply when you are going to use the equitable, the one from the equitable share, but not to those that come from CASP and Ilima and Dora? Is that what you were saying, or have I misunderstood?
No, Chair. What applies is where you have gazetted it. It doesn't matter where it comes from. But when you do your budget gazetting, where did you allocate the money?
Okay, so you talk about gazetting. I take it that means publish what you said in a government gazette, is that right?
That's correct, Chair. The MEC has, you submit that, the MEC goes and present the budget vote, and then the legislature must pass it.
Yes.
And then it goes to the gazette.
And in his budget vote, the MEC would indicate what would fall under transfers.
That's correct, Chair.
And you say if funds fall under transfers, then procurement prescripts don't apply.
That's correct, Chair.
That's what you say.
Yeah, that was correct until April 2018.
Yes.
Then National Treasury released a new instruction
note.
Yes, Chair.
And saying
This
actually does apply.
The new instruction note was then saying this is now the way it has changed now since May 2018, but they have said it was retrospective from 2016.
Yes.
And then that has now changed.
Yes.
There are systems that they've been put in place now to say, even if the money has been put under transfer, these are the following processes that you need to follow.
Yes. Now, what is it that excluded the requirement for procurement procedures from application if funds that were going to be used fell under transfers? What is it that was the basis for the view that if funds have been put under transfers, then procurement processes don't apply?
Chair, there were kinds of enterprises that you would not go and bid for. Like when you transfer money to a farmer, like for example, you're transferring government money to an NGO to implement a process for you. You would gazette that money under transfer, and you know to which NGO you want to transfer the money. So you would not go and publish a tender to say, I need somebody to come and bid for this money for this particular purpose. You had already, it's for example, like you have got, I want to use another example.
Well, obviously,
outside.
you invite bids when you have not made any decision
That's
about
correct,
who
Chair.
the person is that you
That-
want to be involved in the project.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. So if you already know, then doing bids, even if the procurement process is applicable, would be just going through the motions.
That is our understanding, sir, because as the money came, we had already approved projects to say this money is going to this particular farm.
Yes. But if you are going to appoint an implementing agent, even in the example of a farmer, you might, the funds, if you are going to transfer the funds to the farmer, you might not be buying goods or services from the farmer.
That's correct.
But if you are going to appoint an implementing agent who is going to do certain things in order for something to be successful, you are going to be getting services, isn't it?
Chair, there is no direct benefit from government.
So why do you appoint the agent then?
Because
If there is no benefit for you?
because our previous experience of giving the money directly to the farmer, we had experienced problem. So we had to come with a solution.
Well, why don't you leave it to the farmer to appoint whoever they want to appoint? Why do you insist that you must be the ones who appoint?
Exactly the problem of accountability. Now,
So do you get a benefit or do you not get a benefit from the agent?
the department does not get any benefit, Chair.
So it can do without them,
We can do without them.
and there would be no problem.
There will be problems, Chair, because you are not going to have a project that you intend.
Well, isn't the position that you want farmers to be assisted in a certain way? You want to assist the farmers, actually, yourself.
That's correct, Chair.
Indeed, under a certain regime, you could have personnel in your department that you can send and say, go and assist these farmers to be successful with what they are doing. And you pay those people yourselves.
That's correct, Chair.
That's one regime in which you could do this. But another regime is that you get somebody from outside the government who has the skills that you believe are necessary in order to make the farmers successful. So you say this person has got good skills. So this person must provide the assistance. And isn't the position that you pay them for the services?
Yeah, Chair, you are correct that we had personnel in the department, which we have used to assist the farm. The only difference is that if you do that, then you must gazette the money under goods and services. Then
And why don't you want to do that?
Then we had the problem, Chair, of having to register those assets you have bought for the farmer into your asset register.
It may be that we might need to look at this later on much more. But as things stand, from what you have said to me, it does seem that you have a project which you want to be successful, and you need certain services in order for it to be successful. And you bring in an agent, you call them an implementing agent. They implement your project. And aren't you the one who pays them?
That's correct, Chair.
You pay them.
Yes, Chair.
Why? What do you pay them for?
Chair, we transfer the money for them to implement the project. It's not like we are paying them.
But you have something that you want them to do,
That's correct, Chair.
and that is providing certain services,
Yes.
and you transfer the money from which they get paid.
Yes, Chair, they get paid even if it is them or the farmer has appointed somebody else to come and implement, that payment still happens. Whoever you have appointed to come and do the job, you still
Yes.
do the payment.
Okay, we might have to deal with it at some other time. Ms. Kabashe, let me allow you to move to the area that you wanted to move to.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually going to deal with some of the issues that you've been dealing with, but that's fine, I still have more. Yes. So the first one, Mr. Tabete, relates to the question of goods and services and where that asset sits, if you are going to comply with the SCM policy.
That's correct.
Let's take the example, one of the witnesses may have mentioned it, or I might have read about this. Let's take the example of the Free State Development Corporation.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kabashe, we forgot to mention something. We have arranged to continue until 5 o'clock. I take it you have no problem, Mr. Tabete, with that. So I just wanted to mention that because ordinarily people expect that we would stop at 4. So we will continue until 5 o'clock. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. And you'll correct me in my interpretation, because this is how I've understood the situation. So you have the Free State Development Corporation, we call it the FDC, taking over the running of the Vrede Dairy Farm. I know there's a lot we're still going to discuss, but allow me to use this example. The assets that sit on and at that dairy farm, who do those then belong to? Because as I understand your evidence, they would not belong to the department, the goods and services, so those cattle, the feed, the machinery, the equipment. FDC is compelled, my word, to register those items as FDC items, but they don't belong to the FDC. Isn't that a problem in itself, in not having a way of dealing with those goods and services as the department that would own them?
We wouldn't owe them, Chair, because of the condition of the grant. So you cannot deviate from the condition of the grant, because the condition of the grant says the beneficiary of all assets that comes from this allocation is the farmer. So you would not then take these assets and pay. The condition says if you do that, then you must repay the money back, because the department has benefited. It is not intended for the benefit of the state, it is intended for the benefit of the farmer. So you wouldn't take those assets and register them in the asset register of the department.
However, if you had used part of the provincial allocation to capitalize the project, so I accept your explanation for CASP and ILIMA. If you had used other money to capitalize the project, that money is then used to buy cattle and tractors, etc. Those things would normally be called goods and services.
Yes.
Who owns, and I suppose I'm also looking at the context of there being no beneficiaries really for the Estina project. Who owns those items, Mr. Tabete, between the time that they are purchased and the time the beneficiaries are ultimately registered, formally so, as beneficiaries?
Chair, hence the National Department of Agriculture makes it a condition that before they release the money, you must provide them with the list of beneficiaries. That's the requirement. They need to know, as they release the money, it's intended for the following people. Then they have a specific requirement to say we need the names, we need their ID numbers, so that as they release the money, then they know to whom does it belong.
Well, the question was from the time they are purchased to the time they, I think, given to the beneficiary, who is the owner? Now, you from the perspective of lawyers, they may be thinking a lot of things arising from that question, but I think you are supposed to just answer it as a non-lawyer. What would be your understanding at a factual level? Who would claim rights to that, to them during that period?
The farmer is the owner, Chair.
In circumstances where you have an implementing agent, are you calling that person the farmer?
No, Chair. The implementing agent is not the owner of the asset. His job is to implement the project on behalf of the farmer. Hence, we appoint the implementer. So he's not the owner of the asset.
I hear you, and I'll think about what you're saying, just to digest it and try and understand it. I'll grapple with it, because I know I can come back and ask again where I still don't have clarity. But can I ask a related question? You see, the difficulty with implementing agents is that it's very difficult to monitor them closely, because they are the persons who you transfer the lump sum to. Am I right?
That's correct.
The lump sum is then used to pay not only for goods, I'll call those the cattle, the tractors, etc., but for services as well. Where those services are inflated, what remedy do you have? How do you monitor the payment of monies for services that have been inflated? Now, you being the department, of course.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, Chair, of services, because a service could be something that you want somebody to come and do soil samples. And the person comes on the farm and does soil samples, and then the person invoices you to say, this is what I want you to pay me for the samples that I have done, and this is what, and these are your soil samples. Then the implementing agent pays the person for that service. If I were a farmer and somebody comes to my farm and invoices me for soil samples, I will have an indication and understanding that, but I've never seen soil samples this expensive. Then I will be able to say, but there's something not right here. These soil samples are too expensive. So that is my understanding that I have, that if you inflate, then it will be known that this is too expensive.
Well, let's go to a real example. And again, I'm still skirting around the whole Vrede dairy issue. We will get there. If you go to the reference bundle, page 1375.
A or B?
Oh, it's D, it's the last
D.
one, yeah, D.
For Joris.
Are you there?
I'm trying to find it.
No,
Chair.
no problem. No.
Yeah,
It's D for Donald, you've got it?
yeah, I've got it.
If you go to page 1375, you have that.
I've got it, Chair.
We'll read it in a minute, but can you also page across to 1378 and then keep your finger on both, if you can keep them both there as open. I've just put my fingers between the pages to keep both open.
1375,
And 1378,
okay,
because I'll go from one to the other.
okay.
You recognize, of course, 1378.
Yes, I see it, Chair.
You see your signature on 1378.
1378, yes, I see
Yes.
it, Chair.
Maybe we should just start there because it is your document and say that this document was the confirmation of completion of phase 1 of the project
That's
in
correct.
relation to the Vrede Dairy Farm.
That's correct.
And what you have here, I think it's better to read this into the record, just to be absolutely accurate, is you write on the 18th of January 2013 to Estina Pty Limited in Vrede, subject confirmation of completion of phase 1 of the project, reference contract signed between the department and Estina dated July 2012. We refer to the above contract signed between the department and Estina with regard to setting up of an integrated dairy project in Vrede, Phumelela municipality. We are pleased to confirm that we've been receiving regular monthly and quarterly reports from Estina and are satisfied with the progress made so far. With regard to the obligations of Estina for completion of phase 1 of the project by December 31, 2012, we are also pleased to confirm that all the obligations as required by the contract have been met as per details below. So you set out the details below, Estina obligations for first phase. So you have a number of items on the left-hand column, 1 to 9. Then you have the obligation that rested with Estina in the next column. And then on the far right-hand side, you've got remarks. Who makes these remarks on the far right-hand side, Mr. Tawete?
Chair, these remarks on the right should be remarks of the department.
So you would have, if not prepared this, you would have read this because you signed this document.
That's correct.
What you have said here is in terms of land acquisition, this is on January 18, 2013.
That's correct.
Your remark is land has been registered at the deeds office.
That's correct, Chair.
Factually, what had been registered at the deeds office? Can I give you the context, just to remind you, because you haven't looked at these documents in a while? Unless you know it anyway.
Yes, I know, Chair.
No, then let me listen.
Yes, the registration was the lease agreement
The lease agreement between?
between the department and Estina.
Okay, we'll come back to that when we deal with the FREDA issues. Second, environmental impact assessment. Please read the entry on the right.
Environmental impact assessment.
And then on the right-hand side,
It says applied and confirmation received from DISTIA, which is the Department of Environmental Affairs, Economic, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, I'm sorry.
what is meant by applied and confirmation?
Chair, my understanding of applied and confirmation, it means the environmental impact assessment has been registered.
What does registration mean? Does it mean it has been conducted and concluded, or that simply application has been filed to do an EIA?
Applied and confirmation received, it means it has been done by the company that was appointed, and it has been tabled to the relevant authority that needs to say yes or no.
And that is the confirmation that you await.
That's correct, Chair.
But there's no further work to be done, unless, of course, there are adverse comments from the regulatory authority.
That's correct, Chair. Either they say no, the information is incomplete, we need 1, 2, 3, or no, we decline, or yes, we agree.
Then the feasibility study, which we'll talk about in greater detail when we find time, that had been received by the department.
That's correct, Chair.
Now, we referred to this yesterday and said, as on our records, there is the October 2012 feasibility study.
That's correct.
Is that the one you know about?
That's what when we were talking, we referred to it as pre-feasibility study.
Oh,
Because there was then the second one, which was detailed.
what's the date of the second one? Just roughly, because the only one I have seen in the bundles is the one of October 2012.
Is it the small one or the big one, Chair? Because they
This is actually important.
Yes.
Can we just find it for you and ask you to look at it?
Okay,
Because we're going to be talking about what monies
What-
were paid
okay,
for these services that were rendered.
okay.
The feasibility. My apologies, Chair, we'll find it in a minute. Let's continue while my colleagues
Yes,
look for it,
okay.
Chairman. We'll come back to it in a minute. Let's go to the next item.
That's correct.
The water reticulation, tell us what that is about. Just read, if you can read the entry on the right-hand side.
That is the permission, Chair, that you get it's your water rights that you receive to be able to use water.
And who would be applying for those?
The farm applies for it, and then you give a copy to the municipality that you've got the rights.
So in this instance, the implementing agent would have applied for these.
For
In
it,
fact,
that's-
I think I've seen it as a term in the contract.
That's correct, Chair.
Then the next item is include identified beneficiaries in agri-BEE entity. Please read what's on the right-hand side.
Chair, can I asked to repeat.
Oh,
Item
she's
num-
asking you to read what is written on the right-hand column on item 6, where it says include identifying beneficiaries in agri-BEE entity. Then there's something written under remarks. That's what she's asking you to read.
It says done.
Please explain done to the chairman.
Done, it means we have the beneficiaries and the agri-BEE company has been registered, which is Zina trading as Mhuma Mobu.
Yes, but the this is in January of 2013,
That's correct, Chair.
and the beneficiaries had not been registered yet as at January 18, 2013. You had the list, but you certainly had not told them what their allocations were or anything like that. That's the substantive issue I keep raising.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. Let me go back. You'd remember that is what we wanted to do, but we were advised by the state law advisors not to do it at that time.
What was their reasoning? What explanation did they give you?
Chair, when we were advised was that the beneficiaries would get into the entity as we complete the project. We shouldn't do it before the project is complete because there is nothing to hand over to them. We are still in the process of construction. We should know them who they are, but then we'll enter them into the entity, because you'll remember that originally we even wanted that it should be the company that signs the agreement, because the intention, Chair, was eventually also to dispose the land to them through the land reform program, so that the projects becomes entirely theirs. So we were advised not to proceed in that process, to register it under the government, the land first to become a state land. We implement the project. Once completed, we then transfer them into the entity, which is the farmers' holding company. That's what I understood I was advised to do.
But wouldn't it have been more correct then to say something like, we like saying work in progress when something is being done but has not been completed? There could be a better way of phrasing it. Wouldn't that be more accurate? Because done means, I've delivered on that particular milestone.
Yes, Chair, because what remained would be paperwork to put the names in, because what we had asked them to do, it has been done. What remained was our responsibility. Remember, we're writing this to them and say, what we had asked you to do has been done. What remains became our responsibility to do.
Can I just debate that with you for 1 minute? What had been done, this is the evidence that has been tendered here at the commission. What had been done is that the department had been to Thembalihle and collected a list of beneficiaries. Then they had also appointed a committee of 3 who would be representing the beneficiaries. Estina didn't do that work. It's the department that did that work. But why is it that when you tick done here, it would appear as if you are now attributing the work that the department actually did to your implementing agent and then paying the implementing agent for it? Have I got it wrong?
Yeah, maybe, Chair, we would have needed the requirements that we said Estina should do in phase 1. Because that will be very clear, because this is in response to what we said they should do.
Yeah.
Then once they have done what we had asked them to do, maybe this might not have been the details of what we had said they should do. Then if we compare the two, we'll then be able to say, but you gave them the work that they did not do, that you did. Because my understanding was that the identification of beneficiaries becomes the responsibility of the department together with the municipality.
But you see, and this might just be my own question, item 6 doesn't say identify beneficiaries. It says include identified beneficiaries in agri-BE entity. What did that mean? Include them in the entity?
Chair, that means you must then take the names of the beneficiaries into the company.
Make them shareholders, make them directors, make them, what does it mean, take them to the company?
That's correct, Chair.
And the remark on the right-hand column, done, does it mean that you were saying that had been done?
Yeah, hence, Chair, I was making the request that we need to go back to the original obligation that was given, because this might not have been correctly captured, so that we check if it was in line with what we gave them as an obligation.
Well, but here, in this letter, on the left-hand column, you have written, well, above that, those two columns, you write Estina obligations for first phase. And then you write at the top obligation. Well, you write number and you say obligation. And then you have got number 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9. And under obligation, you have set out what the obligation is. The first one is land acquisition. So that means Estina had the obligation to acquire land. Then under 6, the obligation under 6, like all the other obligations, must mean you are setting out Estina's obligations for first phase. And under 6, you are in effect saying Estina had an obligation to include identified beneficiaries in agri-BEE entity. And your remark on the right-hand column is Estina had done that. So, is it correct that one of Estina's obligations for the first phase was to include identified beneficiaries in agri-BEE entity?
Hence, Chair, before I confirm on it, I would want to check the original obligation.
Chairman, I have found it.
Okay, yeah, yes.
It is in bundle A. It's the
Reference of
July agreement. So it's bundle A, reference bundle A,
Yes. And
page
what-
11. And then there's an annexure as well, Mr. Tabete, on page 24. Please indicate if that's the document that you think will assist in clarifying this matter.
Page 1, Chair.
Page 11. And it's clause 6 of the agreement. Of the July agreement.
Chair, this is not the
It's not the document you are looking for.
Yes,
Yes.
there is the document that has the milestones and the phases.
Yes, and it's not in the form of an agreement, or is it in
It's
the
in
form
a
of an
table
agreement?
form.
Yeah?
Can I ask you to go to page 24? Because this is the agreement that you signed in July of 2012, 5th and 7th of July.
Yeah, Chair, there is a document that we gave them, which in response, then a costing of all those activities was done. I think that was the document I was looking for.
Okay.
Chairman, we'll find
You'll
that.
try and
If
find
not
it,
today,
yeah.
we'll deal with it next time.
Okay. But
So-
coming back to your letter at page 1378, are you able to say whether you were correct in that letter to reflect that one of Estina's obligations for phase 1 was to include identified beneficiaries in agri-BEE entity? Or are you saying you are not sure whether you are correct in saying that?
I don't think I was correct, Chair,
Yes.
because
Okay.
although the original intention of registering the company and identifying the beneficiaries was complete, but this process of including them in the shell company had not been achieved, Chair.
Okay, had not been achieved.
Had not been achieved as we
Yes.
were advised differently by the state law advisors.
Yes. Okay, so it's a matter that will be dealt with once the document has been found. Okay.
The next item is number 8, item number 8. No, actually, we skipped number 7. So number 6 said include identified beneficiaries in a agri-BEE entity. Number 7 reads set up of agri-BEE entity and clarify roles of stakeholders, these being the department, the agri-BEE entity, and Estina. In the right-hand side, what's your remark there, Mr. Tabete?
Yeah, Chair, I think the one that I've been referring to has been item number 7,
Oh, the one where you need
the setting up.
a certain document, where you need a certain document in order to answer.
To answer that one, Chair.
Oh, so that means we can go back to number 6.
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Oh, okay, all right. So let's go back to 6 then. Is it correct that one of Estina's obligations for the first phase was to include identified beneficiaries in agri-BEE entity?
It's correct, Chair, that we wanted them to do that responsibility, but it was ourselves that put it on hold. Therefore,
yes.
the remark on the right is not correct,
That it was done,
that it was done.
yes. Now, including them, so you still say including identified beneficiaries means what you said a few minutes ago?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, that had not been done,
No, that's true, Chair.
because you had put it on hold.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then we get to number 8, draw a project plan in line with Estina proposals with milestones and timelines for phase 2 as approved by the department.
That's correct, Chair. That is actually the document that I'm looking for.
Now, is that the project proposal or the project, or the business plan?
It's a project plan with milestones and dates of each of the activities that should happen with a budget allocation to each item.
Okay.
Then the last item, we'll come back to you on that one as well. The last item, determine the dates for capital injection by Estina. What's the comment or remark on the right-hand side?
Chair, it says Estina has already commenced investment.
Could you explain that? And this is as at January 18, 2013.
Yes, Chair, in the previous reports that we've been receiving on a monthly basis, in the tables that we have been provided, there were already indications of how much Estina has spent. They had already provided that to us. So hence the comment to say they have already commenced.
We can deal with this now or later. What Estina had spent in relation to what you had advanced, or in relation to their own contribution of 228 million?
In relation to their own, Chair.
Okay, we'll explore that in due course.
Well, let's, you say in your remark, Estina has already commenced investments. And we know that one of the two things that you said you wanted Paras for was direct investments.
That's correct.
Is that what you are talking about, or is investment being used for in a different context here?
Chair, they were already putting money into the project.
In what way?
There was a phase in which they were to do the implementation. But that phase depended on the progress that we've been making. As the progress was moving, then they started their part in preparation with the investment that they had to do.
So they were spending their money to advance the project.
That's correct, Chair.
That's what you mean.
That's correct, Chair.
Do you know by any chance, more or less, how much they may have spent around by this time, January 2013, or is that something that needs checking some documents?
Chair, we have monthly reports of the amounts that they had spent. And going to those reports, we will be able to see how much.
What they had spent.
That's correct, Chair.
What's your rough sense of what they may have spent by then, bearing in mind what you have seen in the reports, in the monthly reports? Obviously, I'm not expecting you to be exact. I'm just, wanting to have a sense from, are we talking about somebody who had spent some millions already by January 2013, or it was less than 100,000, less than 500,000? Are you able to give me some sense on that without going to looking at the documents, or is it something that would require you to look at the documents?
Yeah, Chair, I would need to go to the document. What I would want to mention here, Chair, is that we had discussed, I think yesterday, that the department wanted to make an advance payment, which did not happen. But the work on the ground continued. The work on the ground that we were acknowledging had happened. The department had not spent money yet, which we had intended to do. The payment from the department came later. But what we had then asked them was to say, from this obligation, you must differentiate from what you have done, which was supposed to be done by us, and what you have done, which was supposed to be done by you. So that is clearly indicated in that report.
Okay, thank you.
Can I interrogate your last statement?
That's correct.
30 million was paid in or around July. If it's not the 9th of July, it's the 20th of July. You agree with that?
2013.
No, 2012. The first 30 million was paid in July of 2012. There was a shortfall of 84 million to make up the 114 million. Would you agree with that?
No, Chair.
Okay.
I think if you go back to the report of the investigation of Treasury, they have raised that in the system, the 30 million was captured, but was never paid.
No, the 84 million was captured, but never paid. The 30 million was paid. But the 84, you would be correct if you were saying the 84 million.
Is there a page which might refresh his memory that you want to refer him to, or document?
I must apologize, Chairman, and really, Mr. Tabete, I'm sorry. I wasn't going to be dealing with the monies now. It's sitting here, but my juniors are busy feeding me with, here we go.
I think your other junior is very keen to talk
Also
to you.
trying to get my attention. I
Looks
have
like you
got
have many
two
juniors.
sources,
There are some
actually,
at the back that
Mr.
also want
Tabete,
to talk to
I
you.
have actually got more than I expected. I think the first one we should look at is reference bundle B, page 458, which is a BCT payment list.
Did you say 458?
458, Chairman. It's in bundle B, the reference bundle, but bundle B.
Have you found it, Mr. Tabete?
I'm getting closer, Chair. That's correct, Chair.
You will see you have at the top, Estina, the amount that was paid on the 14th of June 2012 was 30 million rand. Are you convinced now, or is there something you think is not quite right with the document I'm holding?
Exactly, Chair. This is not the proof of payment. This is what gets approved so that you register the payment into the system. The proof of payment is a different document.
And you are certain that it wasn't paid. All that we are looking for is proof, or is the position that you are doubtful that it was paid?
Until I'm proven otherwise, Chair.
Yeah, but your recollection is that it was not
It
paid.
wasn't paid. That's
Yes,
my
okay.
recollection.
But
Chair.
would this kind of document exist if the payment had not been made?
Yes, Chair.
It's done before the actual
Before the
payment
actual
is made.
payment is
So it may have been done in anticipation of payment,
That's correct, Chair.
and then payment might not actually follow.
Follow, yes, Chair.
Okay.
Chairman, with your leave, we have divided the work that we're doing on this stream, Mr. Tabete. So we have a related stream that we call money flows. We have not put those documents before the chairman because we're still working with the broader concept of money flows. However, Chairman, I've got a Standard Bank entry here from that stream
Yes.
of work.
Yes.
It's just not in any of our bundles.
Yes, but it
And-
exists.
But I'm happy to show it and
To
the
him,
entry
yes.
to Mr. Tabete,
Yeah.
just so that he can refresh his
Yes.
memory and understand It's highlighted, Mr. Tabete. My colleague will bring it to you, don't worry.
Yeah, okay.
That's really just to assist you. That what's highlighted at the bottom, please read that into the record, and we will place it before the chairman more appropriately next time we come in. These are records that were summoned from the banks, and that's just one of them.
Yeah, Chair,
Yes,
I may need to go back and do the recheck.
yes,
because
okay.
This matter did come out during the investigation, I think, by the Hawks.
Yes,
We went to the systems of the department.
yes.
We were not able to find it,
That payment will have been
that
done.
payment.
Yes,
And that's why I say I will need to go back.
yes. No, that's fine because we are not finishing today. I think your legal representatives will liaise with Ms. Kabashe if there is any document that the commission is in possession of that might assist in clarifying in your own mind what the position is.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I don't know whether
Can
you
I
want him
point
to
to
keep
one
that
more?
one
No,
or-
Chairman, we would like to
Okay,
take it
all
back.
right.
We'll make.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
just point you to one more entry, which is a sundry payment advice? It may not be what you're looking for in terms of confirmation, but this one is found in, again, reference bundle B at page 654.
Sorry, Chair.
654, reference bundle B. You will see that that's the CASP amount. If you look on the right-hand side, 25,400,000, and then another 4.6 million, signed off by yourself. You have a signature here, HOD. Do you recall what this might have been about?
Chair, this is still a document in anticipation.
Okay.
Oh, this
That's
is,
sundry payment.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Chair, why I'm having a doubt is that
Yes.
it's because when this investigation was done, the CFO, not the previous CFO, the new CFO was requested to go and check in the system. And she came back and made a confirmation to them that you could not find such a payment.
She could not find that payment had been made.
It had been made, yes.
And do you know whether she had gone to the bank to check or not? But she just gave that answer.
Yeah, but the system of the department, because if you paid, your system must
Yes, your
Must-
system should be able to
should
tell you.
pay. Yeah, I'm not
Yes.
sure if they did go to the bank,
Okay, but the department system
indicated that there was,
did not indicate that payment had been
had been
made.
made, yes.
Yes,
Hence,
You are hesitant to accept.
I'm hesitating
Yes.
now to say, was this paid
No, that-
or not paid?
no, that's fine. Between now and next time,
We can,
if it is possible, from your side, you will try and see what you can get, but you will get all the cooperation from the commission if there are any documents that could assist you to have clarity on the matter.
thank you, Chair.
Chairman, I've just consulted with the team, and we'll be able to bring those on Tuesday. We have,
Okay,
just
okay.
to reassure you, Mr. Tabete, that the first 30 million was paid.
Okay.
then the 84 million was entered but not paid until a later date when it was paid in 3 tranches. So I think we're going to, when we come back, show you that the entire 114 million, 30 plus 84, was in fact paid, and we'll show you the dates.
Okay.
We'll make an
Yes,
effort to do that.
and maybe what could be done is to make available to his legal representatives on Monday
Yeah.
those documents, so that by the time we resume on Tuesday, he has had time to reflect on them and consider them, and is able to say, yes, I agree, there was payment, or no, I still don't agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Indeed, Chairman. Chairman, I notice it's 4:55. I can continue with this on
On
Tuesday,
Tuesday, okay, no, that's fine.
if that's the date that you've decided we should.
Yes, on
Return
Monday we are going to have a witness whose evidence belonged to the law enforcement stream, Mr. Mxolisi Nxasana. And he might not finish on Monday and might continue on Tuesday, but I think if he does continue on Tuesday, it will only be for a short, very short, limited time. But there's a chance he might finish on Monday. But and now I remember that I already said in chambers we'll start at 8:30.
We can be here at that time, Chairman.
The only thing is that would be fine if we will have finished with Mr. Nxasana on Monday. If we will not have finished, and maybe it's going to take another hour or 2, it might not be fair to let you be here earlier. And if we have to continue with him, we will start earlier. That is Mr. Nxasana. We won't start at 10. We'll try and start earlier unless there is something that I can't think of now that would prevent us from doing so. So I think we should say, one, in the hope that we will finish, Mr. Nxasana's evidence will be finished on Monday, then we will continue on Tuesday with Mr. Tabete's evidence, and in that event we will start at 8:30. Should we not finish Mr. Nxasana's evidence on Monday, may I request that you keep in touch with, I think Mr. Pretorius would be leading Mr. Nxasana, so that maybe I can indicate what time I think we would start with Mr. Tabete's evidence, and then you can be in touch with his legal representatives to say what time they really would need to be here, so that they don't drive all the way to be at 8:30 only to find that we start at 10 or something. Is that fine?
That's fine, Chairman.
Okay. I take it's fine with you as well. Okay, thank you. All right, then we are going to stop at this stage, Mr. Tabete, and we will continue on Tuesday. We'll work on the basis of 8:30 at this stage, but Monday afternoon that might change if Mr. Nxasana is going to go into Tuesday as well. But your legal representatives will be informed, and then they will let you know. Yes. Okay, we therefore adjourn for today, and we'll resume on Monday, but with a different witness. We adjourn.
All rise.